Great. So, welcome everyone to this volunteer led training on getting your elected officials to act. My name is Marnie Walsh, and I'm the Empowerment Coordinator at American Promise. It's exciting to be with you. I want to let you know that this training is being recorded. Please sign in to the attendance form that I just placed in the chat. The purpose of this Getting Elected Officials to Act team is to provide a training for you to be more effective and confident in motivating your elected official to take action to advance the passage of the 28th Amendment. This could be focused on motivating action by an elected congressperson working to pass the amendment resolution through Congress, which is the first part of the amendment process to win the 28th Amendment, or focused on an elected state official to act through a state or local level resolution, or later to ratify the amendment once it is passed through Congress. Tonight's call is part of a series of 5 trainings and advocacy teams that meet each month. The other teams include 1, using social media to advance the 28th Amendment, which meets on the first Thursday of the month. 2, organizing events, which meets on the first Tuesday of each month. 3, friend banking for a 28th Amendment, which meets on the third Thursday of each month. And 4, writing letters to the editor that actually get published, which meets on the fourth Thursday of each month. I want to make it clear that we're not just talking about a one-time training and then wish you luck. No, the American Promise Empowerment Way is to provide you with trainings, then offer support from a team of folks who will meet monthly, led by trained volunteers to support each other in taking action in that area. These ongoing advocacy teams are a good way for chapter leaders to get existing chapter members into action, and a great way to help new American Promise members to get training in these tactics so new people can be more effective when working with their chapter on getting their state ready to ratify. We encourage you to commit to attend the meetings of the advocacy team that you choose for the next 4 months. I'll share the Google form for that commitment right now in the chat. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask and/or message us in the chat. I want to point out that these skills are useful not just in our advocacy, but for any advocacy group, regardless of the issue. These are skills that can help further any reform you are involved with. Marie HenselderKimmel, American Promise New Jersey leader, and Vicki Barnes, American Promise Minnesota leader, are the volunteer leaders of Getting Elected Officials to Act team, which meets on the second Thursday of the month at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Marie and Vicki, take it away.
Thanks, Marnie, and thank you everybody for joining us. We're also fortunate to have our mentor, Sam Daly Harris, with us tonight, and I'm sure he'll give us some assistance with our discussion as we go along. So thanks for being with us, Sam. And I want to thank Dave. He had some connection problems, but he's back on his phone, we can see. So this is what's going to happen tonight. We're going to start with some inspiration. We'll ask for people to share updates following our asks from lobby day meetings in May, and share any progress from the goals that we set for ourselves last meeting. And then we'll review the champion scale that Sam Daly Harris developed as a measuring stick of our elected officials' level of support from opposed all the way up to champion. Last month, we discussed working with a legislator who was opposed to our issue. Marnie, can you, we don't have the meeting link right now, so forget that. We're going to share that in our follow-up email. Tonight, we'll focus on effective tactics that we can use with an elected official who is neutral, hesitant to say yes or no during the meeting. And in order to cover those tactics, we're going to ask for a volunteer who's recently met with an elected official or their staff that was non-committal in support of our amendment. We'll cover what advocacy methods your group has already done and discuss what further tactics can be taken with comments from the group and then from us and probably Sam. Then you'll have the choice of joining one of our breakout sessions tonight to do more brainstorming on overall tactics for working with a neutral lawmaker, or to learn about how to choose a topic to write on a method that we talked about last month, writing a letter to the editor in a positive light, asking for leadership from a lawmaker who is either opposed or neutral, or for that matter, a supporter, but not doing much beyond co-sponsoring. We're going to bring the group back again to review the tactics that we've discussed, and we'll ask everyone to think about one tactic or one action that they will commit to take between this meeting and next meeting to help move our elected officials along the champion scale, no matter where they are. And then we'll talk about the commitment form again. So first, let's start with a little bit of fun. If you were to host your own talk show, who would be your first guest? And yeah, they have to be living to come on your talk show. So I'm going to start and break the ice for everybody. I would like to interview Representative Katie Porter, because she and her whiteboard really fascinate me. So, so that would be my choice. All right, so I'm just going to call on people so that it's, everybody's screen is different. So Suzanne, can you unmute and tell us who you would invite on your talk show?
I would invite Malcolm Gladwell. I think that he's fun and snarky and interesting.
Okay, great.
Yeah. He tells a good story too.
Yeah, he's a good storyteller. Justin, do you have a guest for your talk show?
I suppose I would invite Nassim Talib. I don't know if you're familiar, but he has very interesting insights into the complexity of the world that I just don't really know of too many other people that can kind of comprehend things the way he does.
Very interesting. Yeah. It'd be an interesting conversation. Dave, can you unmute yourself and share with us who your talk show guest would be? It doesn't have to be political or interesting. It could be sports player, entertainer, it could be anybody. All right, it looks like maybe Dave's having a little trouble. Oh, there he is.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay. AOC.
Okay. Great.
I think we'd have a very interesting conversation, and
yeah, great. Good choice. And Roy, any ideas? Unmute.
The wrong place here to unmute. Probably Jamie Raskin at this point.
Yeah.
He's my representative, but he's very bright and interesting.
Light of life.
Insightful. Pardon me?
His life experience of, losing his son and then leading the impeachment trial was just that blew my mind, just thinking about that, how he had the fortitude to do that. Yeah. Okay,
He's
great.
Amazing guy.
Yeah. And Steve, I don't know if Barb is with you. I've only seen you, but Barb, it says Barb and Steve Miller. So
Barb's down south. She's with our grandson.
Okay.
And his parents. Gee, I was going to say AOC too, but since she's already busy on another talk show, and we picked Jamie Raskin, of course, and I was reminded of Adam Schiff last night as I was reading a book by Will Bunch, of all people. So I'll stick with that. He has
for those of you not in the New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Philadelphia area, Will Bunch is an editorialist for the Philadelphia Inquirer, who is of a progressive bent, but he has some interesting takes on things. So, all right, Sam, you're on the spot.
I kept going back and forth. Mine would be Brene Brown.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. She's fascinating too. Yeah. All right. And Vicki?
Well, now I feel stupid. I go a completely different way than you guys. I would say it's my first talk show. The first night I would have Cher on.
Well, you know,
Because I
very
think she's fascinating, and a lot of people would probably tune in to watch her.
Yeah. And Marnie, what do you
Very
think?
true.
I would choose Gianna Floyd, who's George Floyd's daughter. I just think she's so young and she just has so much power through experience, and like I truly think she's gonna be the next congresswoman changing the world for police reform.
She's wise beyond her years. Some of the
She
comments
is.
she made for her age.
The strength is truly empowering to me.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that was very interesting take. So, Vicki, I think you take it away.
Okay. Well, in this extraordinary and long effort to amend the U.S. Constitution, what keeps me going are great volunteers that keep our mission in the forefront and recognize and seize opportunities when they pop up. And they can pop up when you least expect it. And recently, one of our great volunteers in the rural areas here in Minnesota was up at their cabin and met a neighbor up there she hadn't met before when they were sitting around a campfire. And she told her, Mary Beth was our volunteer's name. She told her what, Mary Beth told her what she's working on. And it turns out that her new friend was a great friend of one of our state senators. And so she gave Mary Beth the state senator's phone number, and Mary Beth contacted her and set up an appointment with her, even though she wasn't her state senator or mine. And the senator met with us, and she'd already been a supporter. And so we wanted to move her further ahead in the advocacy mode, so that along the champions scale. And she talked with us for quite a while and gave us some insight into how the legislature works and doesn't work. And also gave us 4 names of Republican senators that she has personal relationships. She's developed there at the Capitol. And this is her first term, so she's doing a great job. And told us how to introduce ourselves to her, to the senators, using her as a reference. So like one particular senator, she said, oh, just tell him that I said that I thought he would be a good fit for your movement. Another senator, she said, tell her that I speak very highly of her. She was very specific about that. So she gave us different insights into that. So that was very helpful, and we're looking forward to kind of progress and set up meetings with. We just finished our special Senate here in the our special session here in the legislature. So once we give them a little breathing room, we will go ahead and make those appointments with them, with her, using her name as a reference. So you never know. You never know who you might be sitting by and striking up a casual conversation with that might help move our efforts along a little faster. So does anyone have any news of progress that you or your groups made in regards to the asks that you had from your lobby day meetings or other recent contacts with elected official or their staff? Go ahead, raise your hand physically, holler out, whatever, if you have any news to share. Anybody make any progress with lobby day stuff? Because sometimes that takes quite a while. Nope. And nobody met any new elected officials, or nothing to report?
My progress is all negative.
Oh, well, that's
there were
okay too.
follow-up
What do you got?
contacts well, we've been trying to get some more input from our Congressman Tom Malinowski, and we had written some letters to his staff member, who was pretty good at our initial meeting and so forth. Really did not get follow-up from him. We'd asked for follow-up with some specific asks and so forth. So turns out Tom had a town hall about 2 weeks or so ago, and I was able to sign up for that and ask questions and so forth. But they did not address the question. And you know, it was more like submit your question via computer.
Dave,
And,
you're in
so
the,
that
you're
was
in
kind
the
of
right
just,
place. You're in the right place because
Yeah.
we're going to go over different tactics of what the next step is, how to, and just for everybody else, Tom Malinowski is a previous co-sponsor. I think if I remember correctly, he did do a candidate pledge previously, Dave. Is that right? In 2018?
yes, he did.
He did sign the
Correct.
candidate pledge. Yeah. So,
Yep.
yeah. And one thing too, I want to share is that for instance, Andy Kim in New Jersey 3rd, who's going to be doing the webinar with us next week, on the day we met for Lobby Day, his chief of staff was who we met with, and she said, I sent the paperwork out this morning to co-sponsor. That was May 6th. July 1st was when it finally showed up on congress.gov that he had co-sponsored. So if you've noticed, there haven't been very many names that have been added, but that's the second person who I know was told, Ishwari in New Mexico, she was told in her meeting with her Lawmakers staff, oh yes, she's going to be co-sponsoring this week. And it didn't go on until very late May or very beginning of June. So don't get discouraged about that part. Sam, yeah.
Okay.
Could I just say this one thing? I've been sharing this, it's a little longer and I'll make it short, with the staff of groups I coached. I had an op-ed published recently in the Baltimore Sun, and it was rejected by 63 other newspapers, some of them one by one, some of them as a group of 15. And the motto for me is, if at first you don't succeed, try 63 more times. And that's Malinowski or my op-ed, either one.
That's
We'll be
great.
doing that.
Gotcha.
Marnie, did you have something?
Yeah, I was gonna say I attended my first Lobby Day meeting as a new resident of Massachusetts with Senator Markey's aide, which I thought was super exciting to hear what's going on in my new state now and his aide's thoughts about the 28th Amendment and big money out of politics.
Awesome. Dave, did you said you met with his aide? And
Yes.
is it the aide that's in charge of that kind of topic? But that's what
Well,
the legislation. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Because Marie and I attended okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, he was the guy who was assigned to it, and it's interesting because it turns out one of our
Dave is on the call,
members.
Dave.
Yeah, I'm trying to, is that John?
Okay. All right.
Steve, yeah.
So it's just, you know, it was a little disappointing, but we didn't give up. There will be more meetings and so forth. So yeah.
Marie and I were on a webinar with the Congressional Foundation, Management Foundation, and they were talking about how actually a lot of times the congressperson isn't the one that you really want to meet with. If there's a legislative, I mean, at the beginning of the whole thing, right? If there's a legislative aide that's assigned to that area of interest for the office, and a lot of times they can further your message along in a way that will get the congressperson more open to meeting with you. So I don't know if you can ask the office if there's a specific aide that works in the area that you're, of something like a constitutional amendment, a judicial area or something. And it might be a different name than what you had previously. It might be worth pursuing a meeting with that person.
I was actually in that meeting. I'm pretty sure, Dave, though, that he did say that was his area of.
Yeah, I think he did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
So anyway.
All right. Well, we'll keep plugging away.
Yeah.
So for those of you who attended our last, go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing.
Okay. For those of you who attended our last meeting, we kind of set some goals. Is that, let's see, who Roy, you were here, right? And Marie, and were you able to work on your goals at all? Any progress on
not.
that? Okay. Okay. Yeah, my goal was to move the op-ed with my senators along, and we are in the process of writing that. So so we'll just keep plugging away with that too.
Great.
And then I have another share from Nancy Morgan, who is our Virginia chapter leader. She's starting they're trying to reach out to a Republican legislator from Virginia, and she couldn't attend the meeting tonight, but she did want us to share that the objective is to get an advocacy meeting with a Republican legislator from Virginia, and the pre-work to sending a meeting request was, first, she did some deep dive on the legislator and who his donors were, his legislative priorities, influencers, interests. Then she identified the appropriate messenger. So in this case, they identified a small business owner who's a Black American, who's a vet and owns, of course, a small business, and working on the messaging for the meeting request. And then got some great talking points to use in working with a conservative legislator, and made a link between the recent Independence Day celebrations and the need for taking action about getting big money out of politics, trying to make the message resonate on an emotional level with the representative, and trying to personalize the message, highlighting that the requester of the meeting is a vet and a small business owner. So they're waiting for the constituent to send the letter, but that's all the work they did in the background to get to the point to even request a meeting. But that's really worth it to do your work in advance. You have much better chance of success with that.
And Nancy was.
We'll keep you posted.
That was Nancy's task that she set for herself from last month. She was on the call, the last month's team meeting. So and I have a development, and it's actually directly grew out of the teaching that we went over last time. And what we talked about was, when you have a legislator who is opposed, or of course it will definitely apply to neutral, and maybe even somebody who's a previous supporter but now not answering, hint hint Dave, is to write a letter to the editor mentioning the lawmaker in a positive manner, and finding something that they're a piece of legislation or an issue area where they're leading, and something where you can say, thank you for your leadership on this. Now I would really be encouraged to see Representative so-and-so take on leadership on big money in politics and advancing the constitutional amendment. So I did that, and we are working with Representative Jeff Van Drew in New Jersey too, who was a Democrat initially in the Congress and flipped to a Republican in the last Congress. And but he has an interesting history in regards to our issue. So I'm going to ask Marnie, if you would you put the link to the article in the chat? We had a meeting with his deputy chief of staff. He was supposed to be there. Van Drew was supposed to be there, but had a vote that pulled him out. And the deputy chief of staff promised that we would have a follow-up meeting with him actually in June, but we haven't heard back. So I had done this letter to the editor. It was heartening to see the bipartisan leadership of Representative Jeff Van Drew, Republican of New Jersey 2nd, and Representative Andy Kim, Democrat of New Jersey 3rd, in a letter May 6th, calling on Secretary of the Interior Deb Haaland to fill the federal vacancy on the New Jersey Pinelands Commission, open since 2017. The mission of the Pinelands Commission to protect and preserve the pinelands is supported widely by New Jersey residents as a treasured natural resource. As a New Jersey state senator in 2012, then a Democrat, Representative Van Drew showed strong leadership by being the primary sponsor of a successful resolution calling on Congress to pass a constitutional amendment to limit uncontrolled money in politics. Polling shows 75% of Americans of all political persuasions support an amendment to correct the undue influence of big money donors to overpower the will of the people. Representative Van Drew co-sponsored a bipartisan resolution to do so in the last Congress, 2019 to 2020. We need congressional representatives that work to enact the solutions to the concerns of their constituents. I hope that Representative Van Drew will continue the same bipartisan leadership in the efforts to limit uncontrolled money in politics in this Congress. And so that was published in the South Jersey Times, which is probably the primary paper, one of the primary papers down in his district. And I sent the link to it to the Deputy Chief of Staff. And I did call and leave a message a couple days later. I had not heard back from the Deputy Chief of Staff, but it's on my radar to now contact him again and and follow up once more. But this is the kind of a letter that we talk about, mentioning them in a positive, mentioning them specifically in a positive light on a topic that they've worked on and made some. It doesn't have to be a bipartisan thing. It could be just something, it could be something on climate. It could be some whatever. And so for the breakout session, I'll hit on a few of the ways that you can find those topics to write those letters about. Sometimes it can be kind of challenging. So let's go on from there. Does anybody have any quick questions regarding what we've gone over so far? If not, Marnie, if you would share the slide, we're going to review the champion scale. All right, and can you flip back to the previous slide, Marnie? That one. So here's our champion scale. We want to take the limits of the scale are someone who's opposed, and then next is neutral. Then we move them up to supporter. But even when you have somebody who's co-sponsored, who generally we consider a supporter, we're not done there. We have a lot more that we can get them to do, and we can move them a lot further up the champion scale than that. So if you say, well, my representative is a co-sponsor, well, I don't have much more to do. No, you have a lot more to do. So this is what we're going to be talking about. Marnie, can I have the next slide, please? I'm gonna run through these quickly rather than have people read. So opposed is what we did last time. People who are opposed, they say, no, I don't support that. My constituents wouldn't support that, or what you're talking about isn't even a problem. And they're the lowest, obviously, on the scale. We have the most work to do with them. Next slide, please. Neutral is, or uninformed, is what we're going to talk about tonight. So this is someone who might say, well, I need more information, or could you explain it to me more so I understand, or can you give me materials to read so I can make a more informed decision? They basically are sitting on the fence. They're really not telling you yes or no, or not, maybe even not even how they lean. And sometimes somebody who is a supporter can go back to this stage and not be clear on what's going on. Next. So supporter is someone who says, yes, I'll co-sponsor that, or I think that's a good solution and I can get behind it. Next up from a supporter is an advocate. An advocate says, well, now I think it's important to build support for this, or they may agree when you ask them to help you build support with an event, asking them to talk with others, or they offer to talk with others in Congress about supporting it, or maybe collaborating on an op-ed like Vicki just mentioned that she's doing with her senators. Next slide. Leader and a spokesperson. The next level up is a leader and a spokesperson. They might be the lead sponsor on a bill, or the initiator of a sign-on letter or a caucus on our issue. So, certainly John Katko and Ted Deutsch and Jamie McGovern and Jamie Raskin, excuse me, and Jim McGovern would be leader and spokesperson at this point. And Pramila Jayapal for HJ Res 48. So we could definitely we can move some of our supporter Congress people or local state leaders up to advocates, and then maybe even to leader and spokespeople, hopefully continuously, or maybe even if they just verge onto that now and then. And then a champion is the final level. And I know Sam, this is in Sam's words from his slides. He says, I don't like it when groups cheapen the term champion and call anyone who does anything good a champion. And I agree with him. The more I've learned about this, we let people off the hook. They don't really, we're giving them a certificate when they didn't earn it, if we call them a champion. A champion is someone who's so far ahead of us. Marnie, if you could flip to the next slide. They're so passionate, they're out in front of us. They're pushing us to catch up. They say, hey, I have 5 of my Democratic colleagues and 5 of my Republican colleagues to host town hall meetings on overturning the Citizens United decision, or on, just on the idea. And I need your help finding speakers for some of those 10 cities. Wouldn't we love to have a champion like that right now? We don't really have one right now. I don't know, maybe Jamie Raskin, but it doesn't seem like it. So that's the scale. And this will go over at the end, Barney, thanks. So what we're gonna do is, for those, Roy was here last time, we are going to use a volunteer example. Can anyone think of do you have a lawmaker who you feel would be a neutral on the champion scale? You kind of can't get an idea. Are they yes? Are they no? They haven't co-sponsored before, maybe. Maybe they have before, but now you're not so sure. And what we would like to do is sort of go through that situation, what you've done with that person, what you've previously done with that lawmaker, and what your ideas are for moving forward. And then we can get some ideas from the rest of the group. Well, gee, did you think about this or that? And then talk more about it, what other tactics can be done. So what do you think our first, I'll just ask everybody first, what would our goals be with this person? Why are we meeting with this person? What are we trying to accomplish with them? Anybody? What's the foundation of our advocacy with lawmakers? Why are we nice to them and say thank you to them? No, you're cheating, Vicki. Come on, I know you guys know this.
I hate the silence.
Why don't we just throw eggs at their doors and say, you don't like what we like, we want you to do it. We're trying to build a
Relationship.
Oh, yes.
Yay!
So we want to do what with them again soon in the near future?
Probably meet with them.
Yes, we want to meet with them again. We want to get their attention. We want to get their scheduler to say, yes, come meet with Steph or so-and-so. Yes, let's make a meeting with Congressperson so-and-so. That's what we want. Yeah, short term, we want to get that next meeting. And for someone who's opposed or neutral, what would a longer term goal be? When we meet with our Congress people, do you remember what we try to have questions that are what? To get more information out of them.
Find out what their sensitivities are, or
open-ended questions. What do you think about money in politics?
Yeah.
How is it affecting your ability to do your job? Who influences you? How could I change your mind? What would get you to yes? So those are the kinds of questions we want to think about in those meetings, because those questions will not only help build a relationship, those questions will lead us to the influencers that we can then try to go and influence to see how they feel about our topic, and then bring back to that lawmaker to say, hey, Susie Q owns this big industry, and you said that this is a really important industry in your district, and Susie Q is on board. Susie Q wants money out of politics and doesn't want to have to pay money for political spending to try to keep her business in competition with the larger fish in the sea here. So Susie Q is now going to come with me to the next meeting with the congressperson, where it's harder for that congressperson to act disinterested because that's an important industry in the district. Okay.
So would those be the same questions, Marie, that you would use if you're talking to an aide? Like if you say, start with an open-ended question, like how does fundraising make your job harder? That wouldn't be a question for an aide. That would really be a question for a member of Congress. So I feel
Well,
like,
what we can ask the questions to the aide and say, well, does the congressperson have a position? Because the aide won't give their position. They're not supposed to, but does the
Right.
congressperson have a position on what fundraising, what kind of influence fundraising has on the ability to do the job? Or the more direct question of, well, what influencers does the congressperson pay attention to in the district? Who makes a difference? Who has a strong voice with this congressperson? Yeah. So let's try to get into an example. Does anybody have an example of a lawmaker who is neutral? Jamie Raskin.
Somebody you met with?
Brian
Yeah.
Fitzpatrick might be neutral. I certainly don't know that he's opposed, for sure.
Yeah.
And if he hasn't come out opposed or in support, then he's neutral. He's uncommitted.
I think he's uncommitted.
Yeah, we haven't gotten that next call, that next meeting to get the feedback on the amendment, the alternate amendment language that was proposed to the Republicans. So, yeah, possibly.
And were you able to meet with him in person?
No.
Marie? No? Okay.
No, we met with
His
Jeff,
aide.
Jeff and Alan LaPolice, and Suzanne's sister is the constituent, and Suzanne and myself. Yeah. So we only have that one meeting. We just started. We don't have a long history of this. Why this is not the greatest example for this exercise, and we might
Right.
not have a lawmaker to talk about particularly, except for maybe Vicki, your example of the state lawmaker, maybe. But Dave, Dave Malinowski doesn't really count. The other ones that we have. So Vicki, why don't we go over your state lawmaker then?
Well, we met with a state senator, and he was, well, I had a couple of meetings like this, but he kept looking at the bill, the state resolution, and wasn't quite sure, and said he had to ask some people, had some more questions he had to ask around, which means, of course, they're gonna, I think, to my mind, that means they're gonna talk to leadership, which is probably gonna kill it. So, and then we made an appointment with a follow-up appointment with his legislative aide to come back. And then when we tried to go back, it was the meetings were rescheduled and then just canceled. So so that's kind of that's an obstacle. That's kind of a deliberate non-committal.
Yeah.
And so that's not a yes, but it's not a no to me in my mind. So and so that's when we have to step back and look and see, okay, how can we get to him another way? Who would be an influencer?
Did you have constituents in the meeting?
I had messages from constituents.
Okay.
In the meetings, because I was he was in a rural area, and there were some farmers that I talked to, and they sent comments in. It's hard for farmers to get to the Capitol.
And
so,
what about, because we're just some of the other things that that we've gone through with these other lawmakers is, what about letters to the editor or letters to his? I know you said the Minnesota state lawmakers actually don't have offices, but I imagine they have a post office box or something where they can receive.
but they have their personal mail is public knowledge, their personal address, but they prefer they get mail at the Capitol.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be, and I was working with one of his constituents to see about getting him to do a letter to the editor. So that's still in the mix.
Okay.
But yeah, definitely to the small paper, but I think I'd like to have another go at this guy.
Yeah, well, it sounds like
and
it.
So I want to try and get in to see him again.
So things you would want to think about normally would be, do you have a constituent in the meeting, right? How much positive media have you been able to get for him? Do you have a letter, mentioning him in a positive light or several in the local papers? is there information, I know you asked them this, was there information that they needed that you could provide? And, you know, if they're just
Yep.
uninformed,
Mhm.
and then maybe the question, and you said they don't have aides, correct? That your state.
They do, not legislative aides. They have somebody that has a desk there. So, I mean, it's not more of a, jack of all trades. But I have to tell you, this particular guy I'm thinking about, when we met with him, his first comment to me was, you don't have to tell me about money and politics. I go to the grocery store and I hear it all the time. So he knows. So it's just a matter of getting him to commit to supporting it. So I don't think that, more information would have been necessary. It's just, I'm going to have to keep trying to find somebody. And I branched out more in this area. So I think I'll be able to get somebody to come to the Capitol and meet with him in person, or maybe for coffee down in his district.
And
But
you said he's canceled meetings, so maybe you have to make the murmur in the grocery store turn into
exactly.
a louder, in his face, letters from constituents,
Yep.
letters and comments, or an op-ed in the paper. Sam, what else?
Yep.
What else to try to get this attention of this state lawmaker?
Yeah, I mean, my question would be, this is a Republican lawmaker in Minnesota. Do you have a good relationship with a different Republican lawmaker in Minnesota? And might any one of them, if they exist, be a messenger or a door opener or someone who would attract him? Because you've done some.
No, I don't. I mean,
okay.
The one Republican state senator who supported it and introduced the resolution did not run for re-election. He's running for governor. So, and then COVID hit. So no, I don't have anybody right now, but that is what we're working on. And once I get, people, and I will say, once I get somebody to introduce the resolution again, I'll tell them, this guy says he knows money and politics is a problem. So let's see how we can get him on board too. But again, I'm going to be working more in his area to try and get constituents involved. I wish I had enough out there where I could have a county fair down there.
How many hours drive? How many hours drive from where you live to where a key city his district is?
About an hour and a half.
Oh, okay. And how do you find people? How do you find people in his constituency?
Through people.
Okay.
I have, a lot of good friends that I'm, branching out all the time. The Farmers Union helps, Democratic Party people.
And when is his next reelection? Is it a year from November?
Yeah, everybody's running again.
A year from November. Yeah. I mean, people tend to listen a little better as elections get a little closer.
Well, I will make sure that whoever comes out in opposition to him, it campaigns on this issue. I have things in place for that.
Okay.
So it's frustrating, right? But you just keep plugging away and you try any way you can. If this doesn't work, try that, and Sam has some great road maps for us to use, great tools. So,
yeah, and like you said, other influencers, anyone who would endorse him, any key constituencies in that area. It sounds like the farmers, the contact that you already have with the Farmers Union and Farm Bureau. And I know this is something that I don't think about so much here in New Jersey, but the faith community that they belong to, if they have a strong affiliation with a faith community, and you can find an influencer in that faith community.
Yep.
Could be a good leverage. So, all right. So those are those are definitely some good things that kind of go over what with somebody who's neutral. They haven't said yes, they haven't said no, but you're sort of spinning your wheels with them. So I guess the question is, if at this point we have about 15 minutes, and if we don't have more, we can go into breakouts, and if some people are interested in discussing another example, maybe we want to do an an opposed or or even a supporter, because it's the same sort of, a lot of the same sort of techniques. And then the second breakout would be to go over how do you research, how to come up with a topic for a letter to the editor that's in a positive light on another issue, drawing interest to the other issue. So the question is, should we go into those breakouts or should we just flip to the background to the letter to the editor? Who wants to discuss another example of a lawmaker? Just do hands up. Who wants to talk about, who wants to go on to the how do you find the background for the letter to the editor in a positive light?
Let's do that. That's a good choice.
All right. So I'm gonna share my screen. Are you seeing Ballotpedia?
There we go.
So this is Jeff Andrew on Ballotpedia. So Ballotpedia and govtrack.us, I'll put both of those in the chat, are two really good places to look. Ballotpedia will give you, it's really good for doing research on an individual lawmaker too. You just use the search here and put their name in, and they'll tell you what their committee assignments are, when they last ran, what prior offices, gives you connections to all of their websites and social media, their key votes, what their campaign promises were, down here at the bottom too. There's a lot of good information here. So that's one thing, and this even goes back to his state Senate history. So that's one good one. And then the other is govtrack.us. Everybody seeing that, the govtrack.us now? Okay. So I think this is probably even better. So it tells you a little bit about his district, and this gives you this analysis. And unfortunately, he did vote to overturn the election and join the Supreme Court case for Texas. So it gives you that background. It gives a report card where he is on the ideology, which is here, and he's here, kind of not quite in the middle of the Republicans, interestingly enough. It gives you ratings from advocacy organizations, which I think could be definitely a place where, oh, okay, interesting. Planned Parenthood Action Fund gives them 100%, and League of Conservation Voters gives them 100%. Human Rights Campaign, the Club for Growth, 26%. So some of those fields might be something you could find something in. And then it tells you bills that he actually sponsored and were enacted. So here's Land and Water Conservation Fund Permanent Funding Act. And the letter that I found that was pretty recent, that was bipartisan, was from his website in his press releases, but here's another conservation piece. So that's probably something, that I could definitely find some leadership in. If you go down here to bills sponsored, it tells you what areas he focuses on in his bills. And if you click on here, no, it's not taking it to the next one. So when you do click on that, it takes you to, let's go. It'll tell you, it'll also list the co-sponsorships. I think I'm missing, I didn't get the right link here, but it'll tell you of his bills that he introduced, how many had co-sponsors and who were they? I apologize for scrolling quickly here. Bill sponsored.
This is just for federal officials, not for state officials, correct?
GovTrack.us is federal. Ballotpedia, though, the one that I was on previously, remember that gave his state official information as well. Primary sources, yeah. So you can get a lot of, you get a lot of background information and some leads on places to look. The website, their own website, can be pretty helpful, because that will tell you, what are they focusing on their website? What's of interest to them? What do they think of is of interest to their district, and their press releases as well. A third thing you can do is use Google Alerts to set up. Google will search for you every day on an alert that you set up and tell you what came up on the web under that alert. So you could set up an alert for Van Drew, sponsored legislation, land conservation. And it would tell you if he has anything that comes up on that on an everyday basis. So, and I think if I'm not mistaken, I haven't used it this way. Well, that's an alert. You can, well, of course, on Google, you can search between 2018 and 2020 bills on land conservation for Jeff Van Drew. And you can, try to hone in on a topic that way. But that, if you do something like that and spend a half an hour, probable that you can find something for pretty much everyone that you could do that, use that formula of thank you for your leadership on X, because yeah, this and that, and then I would like, we'd like to see leadership on the constitutional amendment, because it's has the support of 75% of Americans across the political spectrum. And if you want to link money and politics back to whatever they do work on, you can try to do that too, but be careful, because if it's somebody who has a different, a more very, very conservative leaning, then you have to really make sure you're using a message about money and politics that matches with the conservative leaning, versus if they're very liberal and they haven't signed on the same way, messaging that matches the ideology of the lawmaker. Anybody have any questions? Good. So why don't we go back to that slide? Marnie, if you can put the slides up, and that last, thank you. If you want to do that recap. Vicki, you want to do the recap here? You're muted.
Sorry, I had dogs barking. The tactics for neutral elected officials. So if simply uninformed, provide educational resources, and that's easy enough to do. Make sure that if it's a conservative legislature, that you have it worded in a conservative light. Number 2, letter to the editor mentioning elected in a positive light. Elected is a leader on blank issue. I'd like to see that same leadership brought to our issue. And you send the published letter to the editor, to the aide in 2 to 3 days. Call the aide back to check to make sure they saw it, and publish it to social media and tag the elected official to get their attention. And 3, if you had local resolution passed in their district, bring the member of that council or commissioner, the board, to present the resolution to the elected. If no resolution yet, consider working on that.
Marnie, go back a slide. This is the opposed. Go back a slide. There you go.
Oh, okay.
But it's pretty much
Well,
the
same thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, if you had the resolution passed, bring a member of that board or council to the meeting with you. And if no resolution yet, consider working on a local resolution in that legislator's district. That's actually a really nice way to make some noise, and plus build a movement, right? And then number 4, identify influencers to recruit to meet jointly with you, with the elected official. So ask the staff or the official themselves who has influence with you, whose opinion do you count on, who do you like to hear from, and research the district better, the campaign endorsers, who's donating money to them, who's the largest employer, largest campaign donator, member of a faith community, and the small businesses. Talk to the small business owners. Especially in the state legislature, they want to hear from the small business owners, and most small businesses support getting money out of politics.
Great. So these will be, and then these were the tactics for last time, which are mostly the same, except it's not the uninformed problem. It's the proposed, and the questions will be a little different. We can, Marnie, you can stop sharing, please. Great. So does anybody have any questions on any of those tactics?
Does it seem doable to you? Do you kind of have a clear path to go forward? Do you know what your next step is?
Well, it seems doable, but I think Sam's right. If you've tried 3 or 4 times, you have about another 59 or 60 times to go.
I just want to add, I think what you're doing next week with Congressman Kim, it's a whole other level, but moving a supporter, asking them to speak publicly about our issue, and be an advocate in public, a letter to the editor, in this case, a briefing or town hall meeting, is a fabulous example of supporter. No, not done. There's more to do, and it's great. Do you even know how many are registered for that, or not yet?
There are 40 so far, but we're really, it was a little difficult with the holiday. I didn't want things to get lost, before the holiday, and then just, so we're really doing a lot of contact.
But it's just such a perfect example of working a level of the champion scale, in this case, where most people go, oh, I'm done. No, supporter, what's next?
Yeah. And I actually had I'll just try to share this very quickly. I was going to share it earlier in the meeting. I was on a Braver Angels workshop about 2 weeks ago, and the guests to the Braver Angels workshop were the chair and the vice chair of the House Select Committee on the Modernization of Congress, which is a Democrat, Derek Wilmer of Washington, and a Republican, William Timmons of South Carolina, he's a freshman, and Kilmer, is a sophomore. So there was very, very interesting questions. But one of the questions was, just to back up, 6 Republicans, 6 Democrats on this committee, and they worked through the last Congress, and then they were empowered to work again because of the recommendations they were coming out with. And this is all about making things more bipartisan, making Congress work better, changing the structure of their work week so that they're brought together more, and so on. He said, really the way things work now, much of their work time is really based on their committees. Their work schedule, who they get to see, what they get to do is based on which committees they are in and who they see as the committee members that they're working with. They don't get to see, there aren't times where they mix around and see a lot of other Congress people, even despite what's going on with COVID, even before COVID. So the question was, well, you've come up with these recommendations, and there are 12 of you, and you're working on how to better Congress. How many of the 435 members of Congress do you think are really aware of the set of recommendations that you put out at the end of the last Congress? Because it's to improve their functionality. He said about 30%. They're Congress people working on improving Congress, and they're members of Congress, and they thought there was only 30% penetration of knowledge throughout the rest of the House, 435 members. So when I hear
that's neutral or uninformed.
Correct. Correct. So when I hear that, I think, my God, I was shocked. We have so much work to do, because we can't just get in front of these Congress people once and call it, even if they're in support of us, we can't just get in front of them once and call it a day. We have to be back there and get them to talk to their to their colleagues and get more people to talk to other Congress people and just parlay our movement into a lot more action with a lot more members. You know, we were focused on trying to get 100 meetings around NCLC, and it wasn't only with members of the House, you know, it was mixed in with Senate members, which are also, and that's another 100, right? So we have a lot of work that we can do. And I think this champion scale is just very empowering for us to get a roadmap of how to do it. So I encourage you, thank you for coming tonight. And I encourage you, if you feel like something was helpful that you learned tonight, share it with your chapter members, share it with other chapter leaders. If you have friends who you think, you know what, I think they want to do something, they want to make their life have purpose, like Sam's op-ed said, invite them to come on board with American Promise and work with us to be powerful and get messages to their representatives and meet with their representatives so we can improve our democracy.
And if you'd like to work on your letter to the editor to bring it to the next step, you can join the writing the letters to the editor that actually get published, which will be on the fourth Thursday of this month, which will be
22nd.
July 29th. 22nd. Yeah, 22nd. So you can, bring your information that you digged up that you want to congratulate them for, thank them for, and ask them to bring that same leadership to the amendment with you, and then go into breakout rooms, I think they do, and then write letters to the editor. So you'll have a lot of help with that.
And our next meeting is on the Tuesday, the 8th of August, Thursday, the 12th. Ooh, I'm sorry. Thursday, the 12th of August, the second Thursday of the month. Thanks, Marnie, for putting the sign up in the chat. And do you want to close us out, Marnie?
Sure. So thank you everyone for attending. I thought this session was amazing. Mostly thank you to Vicki and Marie for just being their amazing and wonderful leaders. But everyone have a great night. If you need anything, please email me at Marnie, MARNIEW @AmericanPromise.net. If you want to get involved in a chapter or potentially conduct a tabling event like Miss Vicki's doing, just let us know.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone have a great evening.
And you'll be getting a follow-up. You'll get a follow-up email with the information.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thanks.
Good night,
Have a nice
everyone.
night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Night.
Thank you.